Is World of Warcraft retail raiding completely dead? Let's find out.
It's because I'm right.
But is he though? Asmongold has been having opinions about WoW for a long time and
Oh, look at that. This is when he had enough hair to hide that he's balding.
has been attacked multiple times for them. And I think he's right, and there is data to prove it.
It's all just a personal attack. There are no actual arguments against what I'm saying. There are just personal attacks.
Classic Asmongold right there, boys. It's all just a personal attack. And when it's not a personal attack, you're being emotional, while I'm being logic itself. God, this is so cringe.
That try to discredit me because, and I'll tell you why. The reason, you want to know why? It's because I'm right.
Around September 2023, Asmon was grilled by Quick and Max about his take on raiding because he was either not able to raid anymore or at the very least not capable of actually Mythic raiding. For those of you who don't know, Quick is the former president of Blizzard and a prominent high-end WoW player, and Max is the GM and raid leader of Liquid, multiple winners of Race to World First titles. Yet they were both wrong.
Okay, so first of all, people don't understand one thing about stuff like this. It doesn't matter that you're a top 1%er in the game, because the reality is nothing in our lives as humans is designed to be made around the top 1%ers, pretty much. Nothing. Everything is made about the average players. So the fact that you think your input on why Mythic raiding is fun or not as the 1% is actually, by statistical definitional proof, less valuable than the input of someone who is average at the game. Because you represent literally no one. You are pushing something that is not designed even to be pushed as much as you're doing it. So your opinion is out of bounds in every direction, and it's irrelevant because of that. Games, especially, should never be made thinking and contemplating about the feelings and wants of the 0. whatever percent of the population.
First of all, as far as being a capable Mythic raider, Asmongold is no slouch. Man has been a Mythic raider for years. Now I'm not sure what is qualified as skill, but if I can clear Mythic bosses with these parses, then we can assume Asmongold can smash it, provided he played the game.
Admittedly, four kills, okay, and our average parses are 20, maybe 40 at something at luck. Okay, see, this is the other side of the spectrum. Opinions like this should be thrown out the window, because you need to understand the parse system, okay? The parse system is the same, is essentially literally the exact same thing as the average IQ distribution graph, or anything that has an average in it. AKA, it means if you're not hitting 50, there's something severely wrong with you, okay? You know how my logs looked for my rogue for Season of Discovery when Gnomering started? My first raid, and I have done only 4 raids at this point, in Gnomering with my rogue, my first raid was an average parse of 10 on every boss. How is that possible? Well, I had basic green gear, everything was shit. The comp was not built around me. It's lucky that my guild even let me in. And, no bis, no nothing of that. And I did not look up the talent points, the rotation, nothing online. That's how I do things. You know what happened the second run? Adjusted my talent points, adjusted my rotation slightly. My parse now went to 40. And four runs in now, except for the first 2 bosses, because I am not gonna put adrenaline. I'm not gonna use adrenaline rush. Go back to a main city, respec, so I can actually parse good on all bosses. Okay, if we ignore the first 2 bosses where you should go, well, actually first 3 bosses, I guess, where you should, well, even no, the 3rd boss, the crowd pummeler, I'm still at a solid 70 parse on it. But anyway. Point being, 4 runs in, now my parse is on average 80 on my rogue. And by the way, my gear is still shit, actually. I have only received 4 item pieces in 4 runs. That's not good, and I'm still parsing 80.
consistently, which is why we go to the second point of it all. He doesn't raid or maybe even play anymore. Maybe. I don't know. I wish I had the time to watch all of his streams, but I can only say he cleared a Mirdrasil this tier at the very least. Now, the overall takes that Asmon has been having about the game revolved around raiding, but not exclusively, and they stem from the perspective of a gamer more so than a WoW player. What do I mean by that? Well, there are two main types of players that enjoy World of Warcraft. There's the WoW player, someone who really only plays WoW, maybe dabbles into another game once every few years or so, or maybe plays some mobile games. Primarily, however, it would be that person just plays WoW. Then there's the gamer, the WoW player that might also play Final Fantasy, maybe other RPGs, maybe Dota or League, gets into some Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate, Valorant, and so on. That person would be a gamer, a player that dabbles into video games like what a regular gamer might do.
Okay.
The main difference between the two types is a simple difference of context, which is true over any genre, not just WoW and not just video games. The more you know, the better you can judge and assess things, and sometimes WoW players unfortunately fall into an echo chamber type bubble where they cannot really see past what WoW is or what a game could be outside of Azeroth. A person that has never played another game besides WoW will not have a fully fleshed out opinion over how well designed WoW is or could be. That just wouldn't make sense. It would be just like some
This is, I feel, way oversimplifying things and underestimating the ability of people. He's essentially saying, well, if you're only playing World of Warcraft, your opinion about World of Warcraft is flawed because you could possibly not tell if something's bad in World of Warcraft or something's good in World of Warcraft because you only have played World of Warcraft. And when I put it into that perspective, you probably instantaneously understand it. That's a completely flawed way of looking at things. Now, admittedly, Asmongold does have a flaw in the way that he looks at things. Because he has not been playing World of Warcraft even remotely seriously for, I don't know how long, years I think at this point? Not sure when he stopped, but I think it's years. And he essentially just uses his fame and notoriety to get carried in raids. So his opinions about raids are nonsensical because he's getting carried. Would you ever respect the opinion of someone who's doing a raid if they have never actually done the raid themselves? They don't know the mechanics. They only know a basic, they only know what to do when someone yells at them because, otherwise they're going to wipe the raid, and that's the only thing that they do, and they can just AFK everything else. Do you take an opinion like that seriously? And that's arguably Asmongold's current state. He's just a guy who gets carried in most multiplayer games, and literally never finds anything out for himself and just relies on his chat to tell him things. So his opinion on what's currently happening in retail, while it still should be taken into account, it by definition is flawed.
Someone saying that a bowl of cereal is the best dish one can cook, but they never had a steak, a risotto, a cake, or a burger. You cannot say WoW is good or bad without playing other games. At most, you can compare one version of WoW with another version of WoW. Unfortunately, World of Warcraft does not exist within its own pocket dimension, but exists in the direct competition with other games, making the quality of other video games be relevant, hence why it is important to view WoW from the lens of what a video game can be like. I made this whole tangent to point out that just because Asmon doesn't play WoW anymore, or didn't at the point of this controversy, doesn't mean he doesn't know if WoW is good or bad, because we as well play other games. We have a second YouTube channel dedicated to Diablo 4, which was previously made to cover variety gaming. We play roguelites and single-player RPGs like Witcher and God of War, and still have very similar opinions to Asmongold. With that out of the way, as far as opinions go, I believe all of ours are valid. Now, whether we are right or wrong...
Every opinion is valid in this situation, considering there is no real consent. There is no real way to prove that World of Warcraft is fundamentally good currently or bad. The only thing that proves this is the more mass opinion. If the mass opinion is bad, it doesn't matter why these people think that it's bad. It makes it bad because that's the mass opinion. This is what we do at situations like this, and there's literally nothing else that we can do. Asmongold's reasons for disliking retail raiding are probably way different, honestly, than anyone else's opinions if you would actually, like, compare them one for one.
That's a different topic, and today we'll be talking about why I think Asmongold is right, and I can also prove it. His main concern was...
I know why you think he's right, because you want to make a video that he reacts to, because he reacts to positive content about him mostly, because it feeds his ego. And so it's pretty easy to... so that's a lucrative trade.
With the fact that raiding sucks and fewer people play it. This opinion extended to Mythic Plus and other facets of the game like PvP as well. The game has issues, and because of these issues people are playing it less, and this was just before 10.2 was released, with the numbers pointing that he was right at the time. One of Asmongold's biggest opinions that can be unpacked in a lot of ways.
I'm sorry, what is 10.2? I have no idea. Speak in expansion terminology.
Is that the game is designed for the 1%. For raiding, that essentially means people focused on the race world first, and most likely guilds that aim to get into the Hall of Fame, meaning being one of the first 100 to kill the last boss of a raid before everyone else. Or, if we look at the numbers now, out of the total 22,000 Farok kills, only 651 are on Mythic, and this is close to the end of the season. Not even Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but this makes sense. This is what you get. Dude, Mythic Plus is not a... Again, I have said this multiple times. Mythic Plus is not a problem. Mythic Plus is actually successful. It does what it's supposed to do. The problem is people don't like what it's supposed to do, because this is how innately people work. Let me explain. Normal is supposed to be done by everyone. You can get your paraplegic grandma that died 2 days ago and put her on the computer screen. Congratulations, your grandma nailed Mythic, okay? 99 parts. Let's go, baby, be proud. Even though she's dead. Heroic. Your dead grandma, congratulations. She just 70 parts heroic, boy. But Mythic? Nah, in Mythic your grandma is actually still dead and not doing anything. And this is the fundamental human aspect of the things. If we see something that can be achieved, we want to achieve it. And when you have something that's easy, something that's slightly harder and requires slight effort, and then there's something that requires a lot of different effort, and we can't achieve this, even though it's right there, ripe for the pickings, people get mad. In reality, normal, heroic, and mythic are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Normal is letting even dead people parse perfectly. Heroic is, kind of slightly a filter for, the literal unironic neurodivergent people of the world. And Mythic is a filter for anyone probably below the top 10% of performers. This is like top 7% of performers or whatever. But close to that level. And people are pissed because they can't do Mythic. People are pissed because Mythic is actually hard. But that's how it's supposed to be. Mythic in design does not fail. What fails is the way that humans always want everything to be. If they made Mythic easier, you know what would happen? People would complain that there needs to be something above Mythic, and then something above Mythic would be introduced, and we would just be right back to where we started this conversation, only there would be 4 difficulties.
Fame, meaning that less than 3% of the kills are on Mythic. Now, that doesn't mean that less than 3% of players have killed Farok, but a further look at the number of guilds that actually killed Farok points that the number is fairly close, currently sitting at 670 guilds as of recording this video out of the total 5,470 guilds that can be considered Mythic guilds. I got bored trying to scroll more to see how many heroic guilds there are and normal guilds as well, but it's safe to assume that there will be way more left. Should everyone be able to kill Mythic Farok? Probably not, but should there be this big of a difference? I don't think so, and neither does Asmon. And the reason there is because the game is...
But again, The moment we make Mythic easier, the people at the top will complain that there's nothing for them to do, and you need to introduce a Mythic plus plus. That, again, it's a never-ending problem. And then people who don't want to actually put in the time to actually clear Mythic plus plus are gonna complain that they can't clear it, and they should be able to clear it because it's an option. Just by giving an option in a game that can be changed, tweaked, and adjusted, people are never gonna be fine with the idea that they cannot achieve something. This is why people buy carries in World of Warcraft. For Mythic, for PvP, for, well, everything pretty much, honestly. Because they want to achieve it because it's there.
Is being designed for the 1%, which is a cute way of saying it's probably too hard or harder than it should be. The difficulty of the fights with intricate mechanics already create a huge barrier of entry for people when you need complex weak auras, to even offset the fact that now we have private auras.
I think that the race to world first and Blizzard's fixation on creating competitive content has ruined the game.
But yes, he is right about this. We talked about this. The idea that all of this is fine. We just need to remove the idea that you need weak auras to play the games. Weak auras should just be banned altogether, in my opinion. You should not have a weak aura that tells you how to do everything. You should not have all of these things. Because the reality is, weak auras to a certain degree make it so that you don't have to actually know how to even play your class. It tells you when to do this, it tells you when to do this, and it's beeping and doing sounds when something is off, when something procs, okay? And all of that complexity goes out the window when you're trying to make something that's complex for the top 10% of the population. That's problematic, needless to say, right? Because knowing how to play your character should actually be a part of complexity when doing a boss. But, making it too easy or too difficult doesn't work.
Game.
A person wanting to clear Mythic for Rock, the boss with the best loot in the game, has to be in one of these small percentages of people, skill-wise, needs the right amount of add-ons, the proper schedule to allow for the progress towards the kill to be made, and for what? A piece of gear that is equivalent to next season's normal or heroic raid level gear? The
Exactly.
overemphasis on the race world first and esports in general has shifted the game to an overly designed, overly complex combat system that still alienates a lot of people and essentially has made raiding less popular than literally spamming the same dungeon over 30 to 40 times per season in Mythic Plus.
I think every single time that Blizzard has to retune a boss, it is a failure.
True.
You should never have to retune a boss.
Well, that's absolutes, but it's close.
The boss should be released in a way that is fair and fun, and if people kill it quickly, so be it, and if people can't kill it, then get better gear.
Add to this the fact
That's actually also something I agree with, because the reality is World of Warcraft is just about getting a loot at the end of the day, not actually about the achievement of killing a boss. It is what it is. So, if it's an easy boss, who cares? You got loot. If it's a hard boss, who cares? You got loot.
that even for those Mythic raiders, most of them, us included, cannot kill bosses until they get nerfed, after we tested them on the PTR beforehand. This is so much, and why? Is this all needed? Who are we making the game for? The 100,000 people watching the Race to World First for a week and a half? What about the other millions that play for the other 5 months? Potentially millions. Or would play if the game didn't feel like you need a university degree for it.
The problem is that nobody wants to raid. Nobody wants to raid because raiding isn't fun.
Obviously, Asmon is hyperbolic here, but the numbers of raiders being several times lower than that of the Mythic Plus, an endless predictable grind for mediocre results, points to this conclusion, and there are likely...
Wait, excuse me, what conclusion? I did not understand it. Okay, but doesn't this also account for the fact that there are people who that this player plays a paladin and this player plays a priest. Because you also need to understand the disparity between, two things here. One, people are gonna be, even bad players are gonna attempt Mythic Plus. They're gonna attempt it. There's no question about it. Well, people who play Mythic Plus are not gonna do shit like Heroic, okay? If they don't need it, they're not gonna do Heroic, because they're Mythic Plus raiders, okay? They have pride in useless crap like that. And, no, there is a chance that, well, not chance, but it's a fact, that people who play Mythic Plus are inherently way more dedicated to the game than people who don't play Mythic Plus, right? Because by definition, if you're playing Mythic Plus, you're trying to be the better player, you're trying to be the best, which means you're putting in more time. Which means you like the game probably a lot more, honestly, than the person who's just doing the heroic whatever, right? So you're probably gonna be playing a paladin, and then you're gonna be playing a priest in the Mythic Plus. It is what it is.
Points to this conclusion, and there are likely issues and will likely always be issues that can be improved for all things, sure. And this isn't an argument against the game being difficult. Just had this conversation with our patrons earlier as well. The game can be hard and easy as long as it is fun. An example of the game being hard but fun was and still is the Mage Tower. This was a massively successful system introduced in Legion that pit the player against some of the highest individual skill expression they had to put out, but the
Bro, whatever this is, if you call this,
encounter and rewards were so sought after that people just spammed the living shit out of it. And this whole thing changed for raiding. I won't stay in debate.
By the way, people really like shit like this. I remember one of the greatest things was a literal tower in MU Online. Yeah, I played that game. I love top-down players, Lost Ark, MU, and all of that crap. And there was an actual tower that was on chains and moved up. And every floor had the same layout. It was so gratifying to learn 50 floors, or however many I learned, of where to stand to instantaneously just nuke the floor in a second and whatnot. It was so good.
Every single boss, but currently, after a few nerfs of course, the raid is overall easier than Abyss, and in my opinion Farok is way easier than Razageth. This is mostly on the heroic side since that's where most people play, but likely it reverberates to normal and mythic as well. And if we look at the numbers, we can see that just 10.2.5 has more people playing than entire previous patches. I am looking at logs since it's the only access to any form of data that can point to how much the game is being played. This doesn't mean we have 500,000 players, but it does mean it's at least a few more times more popular than previous raids. And you might say that this is just...
We already talked about this and people in the comments section confirmed this when I asked. Because a lot of people don't, when people watch stuff like this, they don't take into account other things that should be taken into account because they're not even debatable. For example, this guy is completely wrong about this comparison here. Because I asked and it was true. So you would have to prove that I'm wrong to actually, make his argument here. And that argument is simple. 10.0 to 10.07 parses are smaller because of two main reasons. One, not everyone levels, acquires gear and blah 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 so fast. So when something is fresh, not everyone is playing the fresh thing because one, maybe they're scared, maybe they're looking for a guide, maybe they're getting their character and so on and so on and so on. That is one, but that's like the small thing. That's just a tidbit I honestly want to just highlight here that people also forget about. But the big one is the difference between these parses and those parses are very simple. At this point, they have nerfed things a lot for Mythic. They have made it more accessible, they have made more classes viable, and shit like that. For example, the most easiest way also these charts alone prove that I am correct is the fact that, look at this, Paladin, 350 parses, versus Paladin here, only 44k parses. This should be equivalent to this if nothing has changed. But the fact that this is different than this now means that, you know, classes have been hugely adjusted and whatnot. That things have been made easier. That, you know, there are more options and all of that stuff. So, you know, it is what it is. So, he's just flat out wrong here.
Game is being played. Previous raids. And you might say that this is just Red Paladins wanting the legendary. And you may be right. And at the same time, that supports the argument even more, especially Asmongold's complaint that the gear gets less relevant with each tier. Farming OP legendary gear that lasts for longer is more enticing and brings people to the game. So what if it's all because of a legendary act?
Yeah. I think this is true. Adding? Well, this cannot not be true, right? Because while I do hate Asmongold's completely autistic way of simplifying things in life that cannot be simplified because then they lose meaning, in games, yeah, simplifying things works really well. And when we simplify the acquisition of a legendary item that is long term, yeah, obviously players are gonna play more and have more fun if they have a inbuilt long-term goal. This is one of the reasons why I think that legendary weapons, or however you want to call them, the thing in Wrath Legion, whatever it's called, before the Shadowlands, before Battle of Azeroth, or was it Battle for Azeroth? Whatever. The one where you had legendary weapons for each class and spec. The reason why people love that, in my opinion, is very simple. Because you could always log in at any point that you wanted, do a little bit of whatever, and you got more powerful because the legendary weapons could grow infinity in power. And people like that. Giving players long-term goals or some kind of objectives like those that, you know, always reward them for doing something is inherently good. And it will promote people playing the game in general.
Isn't that great? Isn't that what we want in a game? A cool, badass weapon to chase and get? If anything, that just proves that having meaningful loot brings people back into the game. Now imagine if this loot was not just a legendary strength axe, but something for more people. Imagine if the loot could carry you through at least half of Season 4. We can speculate, but we can also use the freaking data in front of our face to point out that it is what people have been wanting, or at least part of why they're enjoying the game currently. It is what Asmon was saying he would want: meaningful loot. If he was right about this thing, what about the other stuff?
I'm pretty sure I think we watched that video, right? But when Asmongold says meaningful loot, he doesn't mean a fucking legendary axe. Okay? He means meaningful loot in the same way that I mean meaningful loot in World of Warcraft. And when we say meaningful loot, we mean the idea that I'm gonna go in, do a raid, and, you know, after 2 weeks, catch-up gear is not gonna be outperforming my raid gear 5 times over in stats. Okay? That's what I mean meaningful gear. And not that I change every piece of my gear every 50 minutes when I'm playing the stupid game, okay? That's what we mean by meaningful gear. That every piece of gear is meaningful just in general, not just something that's going to be discarded 15 minutes later on.
This is what I think Blizzard should do. I think they should remove 80% of the trash from raids.
Yes.
And they should add a summoning stone right next to every single boss arena. And next to the summoning stone, there should be a respawn point that if you die to that boss, you respawn at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good.
Although I'm not
sure about the summoning stone, though. You can just make it so you can summon in instances. But, you know, probably helps more than it does bad.
sold on the raid trash. I think trash makes the raid feel more like a lively place than a corridor with 8 bosses just sitting in silence awkwardly waiting for people to come in. I cannot say I'm not keen about the other stuff. Having to wait for people in any form, either them getting their butts to the raid or coming back to start another pool, is incredibly boring and wastes so much
Dude, look at this healer. He's not even doing anything.
time for a raid night. This is even more of an issue when bosses are particularly difficult and require multiple pulls to down, because, you know, the
I mean,
raid
he's casting some instance, but
is tuned for better and better
Bruh.
people. How would the game turn out if more of these things
healing done. MF are overhealed by 3 billion, okay?
would be addressed? And what about Mythic Plus? Well, if we can summarize Asmongold's opinion into a concise point of view, the game is overly designed and overly tuned to the point where new people and current people are finding it hard to engage with. Then we can draw
Nah, I mean, if I had to say one thing in this context is that there's no permanence to action. That's the problem of World of Warcraft, at least, you know, retail. There's not a lot of permanence to your action, and there's no reason to do any action because there's no permanence. In any case, that was pretty good. I liked it, even though I agreed with almost nothing. Marcilian Online. That's a hard name to pronounce. In any case, this was Chris, and thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye bye.